Yes, folks, I am the hunky, chunky, funky monkey, and this is my Star Wars story. As the quote says, start from the start and go on till the end. My first memories of Star Wars were not from the movies, from the toys. I was around 7 years old that I can remember, and me and my schoolmates would wield sticks declaring them lightsabers, which worried our teachers a little bit. After school, we'd gather at various houses to play with the toys and vehicles. We were all jealous of the one girl in our school that had a Millennium Falcon playset. But the Holy Grail was the AT-AT Walker. I think our heads would have exploded if anybody had gotten hold of one of those. The first of the movies I remember seeing is Return of the Jedi. A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back followed soon after. Most birthday parties I attended had at least one of them showing in the background while we played various games, and again with the toys. And I recall an Ewoks cartoon and droids, but nobody else I know ever seems to remember them. It was Star Wars that really got me into the rest of sci-fi, things like Star Trek, Doctor Who, Battlestar Galactica, Buck Rogers, all that kind of thing. And my father introduced me to most of that and showed me a few films as well, which I can barely recall some of them, but it really cemented my love of sci-fi. And those that I grew up with suddenly stopped liking sci-fi, and I became an outcast. That carried on all throughout my teenage years, and I was fairly happy with it. I didn't mind too much. Everybody else was more interested in sport. I read books, played video games, watched TV, all that kind of thing. All the bullying and the ridicule, it didn't really worry me, as they liked their thing, I liked mine. But I was still that stereotypical geek. Then, in my early 20s, something happened. Episode 1 was announced. A new Star Wars film. Lucas was going to continue with the plan we'd all heard about, the prequel trilogy and a sequel trilogy. I couldn't wait. The build-up was odd. Media seemed to be putting a negative spin on it. We were told we had to hate Jar Jar, that the Gungans were annoying and racist stereotypes. Certainly were annoying, which I'm kind of sad about because I love Brian Blessed, but even his turn as Boss Nass I couldn't deal with. But I didn't think they were racist. Then I saw it. The Phantom Menace. It was disappointing. Trade Federation? Midichlorians? Pod racing? Political machinations? What was this? But it was a Star Wars movie. Surely the next one would be better. Attack of the Clones. Oh my. Certainly the worst of the prequel trilogy. But still, it was a Star Wars movie. Then we had the Clone Wars TV series. And that was fantastic. Minimal dialogue, but so well written. And of course, it was the build up to episode 3. Watching the actual Clone Wars, seeing Anakin progress to become this great general. And it had to really push Revenge of the Sith. And Revenge of the Sith had to be good. Otherwise, Star Wars would have been dead right there and then. And thankfully, it was good. The strongest of the 3, and I kind of forgave the first 2. Palpatine's schemes all came to fruition, Anakin's turn. Okay, Padme dying the way she did was there. And I was happy. The prequel trilogy wasn't great, but it was okay. I didn't think we would ever see another Star Wars movie, though. Neither did the people who all of a sudden liked Star Wars again. And as soon as Revenge of the Sith had gone, so did they. And once again, I was an outcast. Then came 2012. It was announced Disney had bought Lucasfilm and Star Wars, and there would indeed be an Episode 7. I was excited, over the moon. Space station, whatever. And then they decanonized the EU. What? Why? I know George wasn't happy with some of the EU. Boba Fett's resurrection, for example. But he still made it canon. Granted, he had different layers of canon, depending on whether it was the films, his work, books, whatever. But he still made it canon. The only reason I could think of for them discarding it would be if they wanted to mine it to use for the sequel trilogy. But even that didn't make sense. Still, Episode 7. Boy, was I hyped. And so were the media. They were really hyping it up this time. Made a big deal about the first black stormtrooper. And we saw shots of Finn with a lightsaber. Cool! Stormtrooper turns out to be a Jedi. Slightly hokey, but I can live with that. A friend took me to see The Force Awakens. As loath as I was to use a wheelchair, my desire to see the film overcame my pride. And I wish it hadn't. Team of stormtroopers attacking a rebel area, a droid entrusted with data, no Jedi around. Nice callback to A New Hope, but a bit on the nose. Guessing it must have been set before the death of Palpatine, right? No. What? And we find our new hero on a desert planet. She finds the droid. Oh, come on, how much more of A New Hope are you going to rip off? All of it? Fuck off. Needless to say, I was not happy, but everyone else seemed to be. And again, I was the outcast. I didn't see Rogue One in theatres. I couldn't bear to see Vader and the mission to steal the Death Star plans ruined. People told me it was okay, but these were the same people that said The Force Awakens was good. I still haven't seen Rogue One. I didn't see The Last Jedi in theatres either. Didn't want to waste my money on another poor Star Wars movie, on another retelling of the original trilogy, because I was convinced that was what it was going to be, and I was kind of right. Friends who saw it said they loved it, except one, who said it was horrible and advised me not to see it. I was astonished. No one had ever told me not to see a Star Wars movie before. Reviews seemed favourable from the media. So I went looking on YouTube, found a few reviews, some good, some bad. And I was disgusted with what I saw. I could not believe my eyes. I had to see the whole movie. Not saying I did it illegally, but I did see the movie. And it was absolutely terrible. And once again I felt like an outcast, because everybody else seemed to like it. So how did I discover the Fandom Menace? Believe it or not, through Twitch fail videos on YouTube. Watched a few for a laugh, and came across something called Bully Hunters. Kind of intrigued me as to what the controversy was all about with that. So I looked up on YouTube and found Alex Becker's channel. Watched his video on the subject, and then watched a few he made about the Star Wars situation. And in one of them he mentioned Geeks and Gamers. So I sought out Jeremy's channel and was welcomed with open arms, no questions asked. Now, I've suffered with depression and anxiety throughout my life. I was apprehensive to get involved with this community, but so many people supported me and just made me feel so welcome and part of the family. And I don't feel like an outcast anymore. Soon after finding the Fandom Menace, Solo, a Star Wars story, dropped. Like a stone. We all know what happened with that. I certainly haven't seen it. And I never will. And after Disney Lucasfilm's behaviour, in what they've allowed their creatives to do, what they've allowed their so-called fans to do, I'm not buying anything Disney anymore, at all. They won't get 1 penny from me if I can ever help it. So what would I say my favourite film is? I'd have to say A New Hope. Return of the Jedi is always going to be, hold a soft spot in my heart because it was the first one I saw. But A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back are the better films, with A New Hope being a self-contained story. So what would I say my least favourite is? Last Jedi. Duh. Favourite character? The popular opinion, I'm gonna have to say Darth Vader. His story overall, even in the prequels, is a story we all know so well. A young man comes into power, seduced by that power, goes off the rails, eventually finds his way back with the help of his family. But it was done in such a way that we actually cared about that character. Least favourite character, I'm going to go with two here. Rose Tico and Finn. They were both absolutely wasted in The Last Jedi. Rose served no purpose whatsoever other than to be a companion to Finn on whatever little side quest he went off on, which he wouldn't have done, actually, if Rose hadn't been there. Finn himself was built up more in The Force Awakens. Slightly. Stormtrooper with PTSD turns out to be a janitor at some point. I mean, they could have done so much more with him, especially with the way the media had built him up in the run-up to the film. Favourite scene would be the Battle of Yavin. That whole desperate last race against the clock. Luke realising the power of the Force and actually tapping into it for the first time. Han coming back at the last minute despite having gone off with just taking the money and running, and then coming back to save his friends. And we started to see the growth of Han then. Least favourite scene? Anything involving Canto Bight. It just bites. I mean, the whole capitalism spiel, freeing the animals over children, it just absolutely out of place in even that bad movie. Favourite weapon? Luke's green lightsaber from Return of the Jedi. I love that handle design, that sleeker, slimmer design, and I'm a sucker for green. Least favourite weapon? I'd have to say the bowcaster. It looks cool at first glance, until you realise that those arms have no real purpose and would actually be a hindrance in combat and manoeuvrability. I think what also colours my perception of it is that in the video games it was always weak and inaccurate. Favourite ship? The original Millennium Falcon. Han's ship from the original trilogy. It could make 0.5 past light speed. It was the ship that made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs, for God's sake. How can you not love it? Least favourite? Count Dooku's solar sail. It just looks... It looks horrible to me. And I'm not a fan of anything with a solar sail in any sci-fi setting anyway. But this could deploy the sail, be sped along, and somehow magically fold that sail back into the ship with no problems whatsoever. Never mind the fact that you couldn't just pull something in like that and recompress it and without a lot of work by engineers. Just wouldn't work. Favourite vehicle is the AT-ST, the Chicken Walker. Brilliant little piece of kit, really. Fast, manoeuvrable. Okay, it was slightly vulnerable to a couple of logs crashing into it, but for a personal vehicle, it was quite handy and looked funny. Least favourite vehicle, Ray's Speeder. It's a very poor design. It's just a box with two exhausts out the back, and she's sitting on the exhaust. That thing would not be fast, would not be manoeuvrable. Favourite quote? The sand quote, obviously. As bad as it is, as bad as that film is, I just love that quote. And you can take out sand and put whatever else you want in. Drekkies, Raylos, they're coarse and irritable, and they get everywhere. Least favourite is going to be I have a bad feeling about this. Said by damn near everybody and meant nothing. You could understand if Luke used it all the time, or even Leia, as maybe sensing something through the Force. But Han, like I said, damn near everyone else. Just overused and lost all meaning. I do have to give a special mention to Padme's quote. So this is how democracy dies, with thunderous applause. Kind of apropos to today's culture. So there we go. That's my story. Hope I haven't bored you too much. I'm going to try to do more videos in future. I know I said I never would. But, I was convinced that I should give it a go. And Stephanie, you're right, I should give it a go. Thank you, darling. I'll see you all in the next video.